Hey y'all, I wanted to share three quick tips with you for starting an eco-friendly garden. And I also have a special offer and an announcement that you're going to want to hear about. So watch until the end for information about that. The first tip is that you need to know your site, know your yard, and know what's growing. So the first part of that is how much sun does your yard get? You can figure this out by knowing what direction your yard faces. So the direction that gets the most sun is south, west gets the second most amount of sun, north gets the least amount of sun, and then east gets the second least amount of sun. You can figure out what direction your yard is facing by pulling out a compass on your phone. Your phone probably already has a compass on it. If it doesn't, I'm sure you can get a free app with a compass. And then you also want to factor in, are there any large objects that are causing shadows? So if your yard is facing south, but there's a huge tree there or a building or a tall fence, then it's going to cast a shadow. So you're not going to get the full amount of sun that you would if there was not that large object there. This is suncalc.org, where you can get kind of a map of the solar arc. If you want to go a little bit deeper with this, you put in your address. This is just a cemetery that's kind of by my house, but you can put in any address and then you can also put in the date. So if you want to figure out what the sun is doing in a different season, a different part of the year than you are right now, you can do that. And you can click and drag. So this is a screenshot. I can't actually show you, but up here, you can drag across for time and then it'll move. This is the sun and it'll move. So this is sunrise, noon, solar noon, and then sunset. And then this area is when the sun is not up, where the sun would be. So yeah, it's just a cool little tool. It's free, suncalc.org. So you also need to know how much water your site gets. So that you want to factor in the average rainfall for your area. Do you live somewhere that it rains and storms a lot? Do you live somewhere with drought? You also need to know if you are on a hill or a slope, because if you are at the top of a hill, even if you live somewhere that gets a decent amount of rain, when it rains, the water is going to go down the slope. So at the top there, it's going to be still relatively dry. Um, and then also, if you're at the bottom of a slope, you're going to get a lot more water because, like I said, it all runs down the hill. And you want to know how well your soil retains moisture. So, if your soil is compacted and not very healthy, then you can have a lot of problems. If you get a lot of rain, then you're going to get like puddling, which you don't ever want because that'll cause anaerobic conditions, meaning not enough oxygen. And those are conditions where pathogenic bacteria, disease causing bacteria, is going to thrive. Um, so, yeah, you want to know if your soil retains moisture or not. And do you have any areas that puddle or pool? Like I said, soil is not supposed to puddle, but some people will have like sump pumps from their basement that go into one area or other drainage systems. And then they end up with kind of this soggy bog area. And that is a good place for a rain garden, which basically means plants that really like the moisture, they like to have a lot of water, and you just plant a bunch of those, and then they will keep that soggy, wet area in check by absorbing all that excess moisture. And you need to know what's growing in your yard. And if you're just starting out with this, it's totally possible, even plausible, that you don't know a decent amount of the plants that are either growing in your yard or growing around your yard. I the other day made a little tutorial about how to identify plants and then how to know if they are native, non-native, invasive, or noxious. And I will link that tutorial in the description for this video. Um, so once you have identified stuff, you need to remove anything that's invasive or noxious for sure, um, because by definition, they cause ecological damage and they will outcompete anything native. They'll outcompete everything basically. They will deplete the soil. They can also be indicators of problems with the soil already. So you want to pull those invasives. Don't use herbicides. You can pull them. You can use machinery like mowing or other machinery or tools, clippers, saws, chainsaws, things like that, depending on the species. Um, and then you want to decide what you're going to do with things that are non-native but also not invasive. So a lot of non-native things are not invasive, but they're kind of the opposite problem where they need extra maintenance, extra resources, extra care because they are in a climate that they didn't evolve in. Um, so a lot of what you're going to buy at a garden center is going to be non-native, possibly also invasive. A lot of garden centers, unfortunately, sell invasive plants. Um, so you're going to probably have a combination of things that either you or a previous owner of your house or whoever planted that are non-native and things that are just kind of growing on their own that are non-native. And as long as they're not invasive or noxious, it's not a super urgent thing to get rid of them. What I like to do is they call it like editing your garden. So since those non-native, non-invasive plants are going to probably have a shorter lifespan than something that's native, when it starts dying or is dead or is having trouble, at that point you can decide to remove it and put in something that's native. You also might have things growing that are native, but they're like in an area that you don't want them to be. So you can dig them up, transplant them somewhere that you think looks better or is better for the way you navigate your yard. Or you could dig it up and give it to someone else. So the second tip for an ecological garden is that you need to care for the soil. This is one of, if not the most important thing for an ecological garden. You can't have healthy plants without healthy soil. You can't have a healthy ecosystem without healthy soil. You can't have a healthy planet without healthy soil. So first of all, you don't want to spray synthetic garden chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, all the sides. Don't do it. It is going to damage the soil and ultimately it's going to make the problem worse. We have created a dependency on a lot of these chemicals because we're so focused on the quick fix of what's going to solve the problem right now. And then that does a ton of ecological harm when we spray these things. And then we have to keep spraying because we've made the problem worse, even if it looks better in the short term. So leave the soil be as much as you can. Don't till or turn the soil. That has caused a lot of problems. A lot of the problems that we have with soil right now are because of excessive tilling. We've been tilling for thousands of years. We have turned really fertile areas into deserts from doing this. It is not your job to aerate the soil. There's nobody in a forest who's coming in and turning all the soil. It is the job of the microbes, of the soil food web, insects, small mammals, birds, etc., to aerate the soil. Think of yourself as a facilitator of the things that come to do with the aeration. You're not aerating it yourself. And same thing with digging. You don't want to do a ton of digging. Obviously, sometimes you need to dig, and that's okay. Just don't do it if you don't have to, and don't dig deeper than you need to. So, like if I'm planting something, I like to go maybe half the length of the container that the plant is in, dig that like half length, and then I put the plant in the ground and then add compost on top of it and around it, and then mulch on top of that. And if you're doing totally no dig, which is a great way to do it, but you need a lot of compost, um, it's like you're just adding layers of compost and then mulch um, on top of the soil and digging in the compost and not in the soil below. Um, Same kind of concept goes with a raised bed where you're just adding on top of it and you're not disturbing the soil underneath the bed. And it's very important to keep the soil covered. So you can do this with plants because living plant roots are part of soil structure and very important to soil structure. And then anywhere that does not have plants, you want to mulch. And you can mulch with things that are already in your yard, like sticks and branches, wood chips, leaves that have fallen, etc. So you don't have to spend a bunch of money on it. And really, those kinds of things, like if you can get organic wood chips, especially if they're like from your actual site, that's going to be way healthier than commercial mulch. Soil organic matter, very important. This is pretty much the problem that we have with soil right now is that it's lacking organic matter because instead of building up the soil like we should be doing, we're always taking away and we're not allowing things to decompose in the soil. We're not adding compost. Um, so, soil organic matter is anything that was once living and is now dead and is decaying, basically. So that's, things you would put in compost if you're composting, like food scraps. Um, and then things like dead plants, dead animals, um, fallen leaves, that sort of thing. So if you don't compost, I would recommend that you start composting because you can, on top of building up your soil, you're also preventing waste going to landfills where it will create methane gas, which is a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So I definitely recommend composting. It's not as scary as it sounds. I know a lot of people are intimidated by the act of composting or they think it's overwhelming to learn, but it's really not that hard. Uh, but if you can't or you don't have space or for whatever reason, you can buy compost. Just make sure that you're getting it from a trusted source. Don't just buy any compost because a lot of the commercially sold compost, you're going to have things in it like manure from animals that have been fed antibiotics. So you don't want antibiotics in your compost when you're trying to build microbes because the purpose of antibiotics is to kill microbes. And then they also might have like composted scraps of their crops and weeds and things that have been sprayed with pesticides. You don't want that. So, um, if you can, you want to get compost from maybe someone who composts locally, maybe a local farmer where you can go in and ask them if they are using, what they're putting in their compost and what they're feeding their animals and stuff like that. And there are also some reputable online sellers of really good compost. Next thing is that you want to leave the leaves, please, please. There's no reason to be leaf blowing, to be raking leaves and putting them in trash bags and sending them to landfills. Leaf litter, especially in the fall and winter, is really important. for building up your soil. It's also really important for wildlife, like really important. There are all sorts of species that need leaf litter to complete their life cycle to survive the winter. Small mammals will build dens and they will line their dens with leaf litter to insulate it. Amphibians and reptiles will live in the leaf litter to stay insulated and also stay moist. Um, and a lot of insects live in the leaf litter throughout the winter to again stay warm, and also a lot of insect larvae live the first part of their life in leaf litter. So please keep the leaves in your yard. Chop and drop is a really useful, really good and easy way to build up your soil. So it's basically just what it sounds like. When a plant is finished for the season, either it's an annual and it's done, or it's a perennial but it's going dormant. You want to chop it at the base, and then you can chop it up finer so it decomposes more easily, and then just drop it on the ground where it grew, and that will allow for when it as it decomposes, the nutrients that the plant um, pulled out from the soil as it was growing are put back into the soil. So it is being recycled as things do in nature. And when your soil is high in organic matter, it's going to retain a ton of water, which is really important. It's part of what soil is supposed to do. If you are somewhere where you get a lot of heavy rain and storms and there's flooding, which is becoming more and more of a problem, um, it will absorb excess water and prevent flooding. If you live somewhere where there is drought, which is also becoming more and more of a problem, then if your soil is high in organic matter, it can retain enough water to keep the plants alive that are growing in it. And the third tip is to be patient. You might have heard me say this before, but land regeneration takes time. It is a long-term solution, not a quick fix. And we need to avoid the quick fixes like chemical sprays and fertilizers. Um, the first year of regenerative gardening is the hardest. It's the most maintenance that you're going to have to do. And then after that, each season is less maintenance. It's more exponential growth of your plants and the soil, the wildlife, all each season are building up and getting stronger and more abundant, which is what you want. Um, we've relied way too heavily on the quick fixes. People see bugs and they panic, even if the bugs aren't actually hurting the plant. See weeds and they panic and they spray. Um, it's not it's not actually fixing the problem. It's like putting a band-aid on a broken arm or whatever. Um, and something that's really important to know is that the maintenance that you're doing in the fall is going to directly affect the yield that you get the next growing season, the next summer. Um, so a lot of times people will not do the fall maintenance, the chop and drop, the leaving the leaves, mulching, um, and then summer comes around and they're fertilizing everything with nitrogen fertilizers, and maybe that looks like it's helping, but really the yield that you would get if you had done the fall maintenance is going to make a way bigger difference than adding fertilizers. Okay, so now I want to talk about the special offer that I have going on. Um, all of these bigger ideas that we've talked about can be broken down into more nuanced concepts that are going to depend on factors for each individual yard. So if you feel like you need help getting started, I want to tell you about my offer, the garden audit, how it works, the results that you'll get from it, and some bonuses that I have available right now through Friday, August 5th. Like I was just talking about, the first year of building a regenerative garden is the hardest. It's where a lot of the work comes in. But after that, every season becomes less maintenance, and you'll see exponential growth in the health of your plants and the soil and the wildlife. When I first moved into my current home at the end of 2018, the only wildlife I ever saw in my yard were mosquitoes and squirrels and Japanese beetles, which are really invasive, and raccoons, which don't talk to me about raccoons. This summer, my yard has had more lightning bugs in it than I've seen in one place since I was a kid. I've seen frogs here for the first time since I've lived here, and a bunch of cool insects like assassin bugs and dragonflies and several species of butterflies and moths. It's easy to waste a ton of time and money and resources like water on your yard. And not only is that wasteful, but it's really harmful to the planet. A regenerative garden requires way less maintenance and way less water than a traditional lawn or garden, but knowing where to start is the key. It's really crucial. So with the garden audit, I will assess what you've got going on and then give you an action plan for each season of the year ahead. I'll also make design sketches of your yard with suggested plant species. And you'll get two 40-minute coaching calls with me to use whenever you want, whether that's when you're first starting out and need some guidance, or if you find yourself with a problem 6 months from now. Plus, you get lifetime access to my Discord server where you can ask questions as they come up. So that's already a lot of value in this one offer. Basically, you get my help for the first year, which, like I said, that's the hardest part of starting a regenerative garden. But I am only taking 3 more clients for this offer until at least the fall, because I'm working on a new offer that I'm going to announce at the very end of this. So watch to the end if you want to hear about that. But depending on if I like doing that offer more, the garden audit might not be available again. It's kind of still up in the air. So this is your chance to get the most one-on-one help with me for your yard that I'm probably going to ever offer, definitely ever offer at this price. So if you've been thinking about getting the garden audit, this is the time, because I know some of you have been lurking. The 3 clients that sign up by Friday are also going to get bonuses. They're going to get free copies of all of my ebooks. They're going to get PDFs of my slideshows for all the presentations I've given so that you can reference them at your leisure. And I'm going to send you either 5 native plants from my plant nursery or 5 species of native seeds, depending on where you're located and what kind of plants you need and what I have in stock. But if I don't have plants for you, I will send you seeds, no extra cost. But this is only if you sign up by Friday. Investing in your garden not only serves you and your family, it helps the entire planet. With a regenerative garden, you could stop paying for lawn services, could grow enough food to feed yourself and your family and still have some left over. You could improve your own physical and mental health, and you could help save the planet from climate change while also restoring declining wildlife populations. Do you see how that's an investment that will pay you back exponentially, not only in saving time and money, but in saving the planet? This isn't me coming in and landscaping for you. This is me teaching you a skill that you can use for the rest of your life. So this sounds like a good fit. Check out my website, nativegardening.com/garden-audit. I will post a link below the video to that. You go to that page, hit add to cart, check out. I have a payment plan. If you need a payment plan, once you've checked out, you will get an email from me with details about how to get started and how to all the things we're going to do. Okay. So since you stayed until the very end, the other announcement, this is like a low-key secret announcement. I haven't announced it anywhere else and won't be for probably a couple weeks at least. Um, So along with this offer for the garden audit, I am going to be launching a 4-week online group course on regenerative gardening, gardening for the future. I'm going to be launching it probably the end of August or early September. I don't have an exact date yet, but if you're one of the 3 people who buy the garden audit by Friday, you will be offered the course at half price when it's ready to launch. And that'll be the lowest price I'll ever offer it at. And you'll have lifetime access to the course, meaning you'll get more content as I add to it over time for no extra cost. If you want to join the waitlist to be one of the first people to hear when the course launches, I will put a link to that also. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just send me an email or a DM and I will get back to you ASAP. Remember, these bonuses only last until Friday, and I am only taking 3 clients for the garden audit right now. So get on it. This is really a lot of value. You get a lot for the price. And I really think that is worth it. So I'm looking forward to us working together.